Hey guys, let's talk about human impact on the environment and species. So humans have done a lot of alteration to Earth's surface, and in doing so have caused a lot of problems. The first one we're going to learn about is ozone depletion. Ozone is a gas. It forms a layer above Earth's surface that kind of acts like global sunscreen, and its whole job is to filter out harmful UV radiation. So you can see in the picture, some of the UV radiation still gets through, and that's how you can still get sunburn. But the really, really bad kind is removed. So what causes the ozone to be depleted? Well, it's something known as a chlorofluorocarbon, or CFC. This is a chemical that is commonly found in aerosol cans like hairspray, styrofoam, and coolants. And what it does is it reacts with the ozone, and that ozone begins to degrade, and it allows a hole to form. So you can see here it's actually forming over Antarctica, and that all has to do with how the Earth spins. And we when when we cause that ozone to degrade, we're essentially getting rid of our sunscreen, and that's causing more UV radiation coming through and can cause diseases such as skin cancer. You can also get plants getting sunburnt. That's those little dark brown spots you can see forming on their leaves, and so it's ultimately a really bad effect for humans. Now, a lot of times ozone depletion gets confused as an effect of or a cause of global climate change. They are two different things. Global climate change is caused by a buildup of excess greenhouse gases trapped inside the Earth's atmosphere. And those gases are carbon dioxide, methane, that's this one, CH4, and nitrous oxide. And those gases come from burning fossil fuels, they come from landfills, they come from cow flatulence, actually, and a lot of other human activities. When you get greenhouse gases built up in the atmosphere, I'm sure you are aware, it causes global climate change, which is an increase in worldwide temperatures that cause global climate patterns to shift. So areas that were once extremely cold are now warming up, and areas that might have been very hot before are now becoming cooler. And the most common effect that you're probably familiar with is the melting of the ice caps. And that's a problem because a lot of our fresh water is held in those glaciers as a reserve. And in North Carolina, how is that affecting us? It's causing our beaches to erode. It's causing a decrease in the actual land. I mean, by what I mean by that is that the ocean is starting to expand, and we're losing some land area. It's also causing some contaminated drinking water. The third impact on the environment is going to be acid precipitation. Again, acid precipitation is caused from burning fossil fuels and other emissions that are produced from cars. Again, nitrous oxide and sulfur oxide, those come from factories. And when acids mix with water, obviously it makes the water become more acidic, and that can have drastic impacts on ecosystems and animals and plants living in those ecosystems. Particularly, like I kind of hinted at, it affects aquatic ecosystems. So animals and plants that live in those waters might be very sensitive to even small changes in the acidity of the water, and that could kill a lot of animals and plants. It actually makes soil less fertile. There's buffers that exist in the soil that help to alleviate any slight changes, but when it's constant acid precipitation, those buffers get depleted, and that can cause damage for us in North Carolina to our conifers, the the pine trees that are growing in the mountains. We're actually a leading source of Christmas trees in the entire country, and you can see in the picture that we're losing a lot of that resource. It also damages human property, so think of gargoyles and things on churches. Those have a lot of basic elements in them, and they basically become melted away when the acid interacts with them. The fourth cause is going to be water pollution. Water pollution actually has a lot of its contamination stem from land. So any of those oil spots, if your car is leaking, any runoff, so when you throw trash out onto the road, fertilizers, they get sprayed on top of land, your grass, your fruits and vegetables in your garden that you might be growing, and they run to the nearest body of water. You can also have water pollution caused by illegal dumping of sewage companies or other chemicals. Duke Energy and other power plants also use water to help cool their nuclear generators, and that can cause water to increase their temperature and is also a form of water pollution. And what does that do? Obviously, it's going to increase the lack of clean drinking water. And with a lack of clean drinking water, we have a higher rise in waterborne illnesses that cause diseases such as cholera, dysentery, and typhoid. We have habitat destruction. You can see those fish have died, and a lot of those plants in that water have died. In North Carolina, we're seeing water pollution caused a lot by hog farm waste lagoons. And a hog farm is just where we're going to raise a whole lot of pigs for food and various other products. But when we get a lot of flooding, when we have a lot of rain, those lagoons actually overflow their boundaries, and all of that waste seeps into the ground. And with waste comes E. coli, so you have E. coli outbreaks. The farmers oftentimes have to provide a lot of hormones and antibiotics to their hogs because they live in such a cramped environment, and so you're seeing the spread of those as well throughout the environment. And you're also going to see algae blooms because they're using that fertilizer and all that other nitrogenous waste, and they're blooming, and that's going to suffocate and kill any of the animals that are living in any nearby aquatic environments. Now let's talk specifically how we're affecting other species. Well, a lot of our impact of other species, particularly animals, is going to come from habitat destruction and ways that we are successfully destroying habitats through deforestation. Fragmentation is when we cut down trees or we build highway systems that split up an ecosystem. Water pollution, obviously. And one we don't think of a whole lot is going to be the introduction of invasive species. Kudzu is the most important one for the South. Kudzu can grow up to 1 foot. Kudzu can grow up to 1 foot a day and can overtake houses like the picture down here. We also have the spread of Dutch elm disease, which is actually caused by a beetle traveling from one elm tree to the other and destroying those trees. So the big problem with our various destructions of habitat has to do with the loss of biodiversity. Biodiversity is a key component in a healthy ecosystem, and it has to do with the number of different species that exist within that one ecosystem, and within each of those species, the amount of genetic variation that exists. So to have a really healthy ecosystem, you're going to have a lot of plants, a lot of animals, and a lot of other organisms living there. And then within each of those species, you're going to have a lot of diversity. You'll also see when we destroy habitats that there's going to be bioaccumulation happening. And bioaccumulation is the buildup of pesticides within the tissues of one particular organism. So the fish, am going to eat some plants that had some pesticides sprayed on them, and I'm going to accrue some of that pesticide in my tissue because it's fat soluble. And the more that I eat, the more that I build up in my system. Now, biomagnification is when the fish get eaten by a predator And for each fish that that predator eats, they get even more of that pesticide. It becomes even more concentrated, and you're going to see, as your trophic levels increase, a higher amount of that body mass actually infected by that pesticide. Now, the big important example of bioaccumulation and biomagnification is the use of DDT. It is a pesticide that we used a while back to help kill black flies, and that DDT was consumed by fish, and then those fish were obviously consumed by eagles. And what happened was that DDT caused a change in the production of the eggshell of the eagles, and when the mothers went to sit on their babies to incubate them before hatching, they actually squished their eagle eggs and caused ultimately they caused a drastic decline in the number of eagles, and ultimately that led to eagles being put on the endangered species list. So it's a very, very, very bad thing. So there are several things that happen when biodiversity is lost. The first is that species are going to become endangered and or extinct. Another is that when we lose biodiversity, we are losing a possible future medicine in the form of a plant or an animal or a product that those animals or plants produce. We are allowing those species to become susceptible to diseases, other pests, and possibly not being able to survive any drastic environmental changes. And ultimately, all of these things lead to an unstable ecosystem. And if you have an unstable ecosystem, that could lead to collapse of food chains. And when food chains collapse, then you no longer have an ecosystem. It is just destroyed. So check yourself. I want you to answer these 3 questions and have them ready to be checked tomorrow in class.